The Parable of the Three Domains. Human life and the life of communities is not what it seems. In fact, it follows a pattern evident to some and concealed to others. Again, more than one pattern is moving at a time. Yet men take one part of one pattern and try to weld it with another. They invariably find what they expect, not what is really there. Let us consider, for example, three things: the wheat in the field, the water in the stream, and the salt in the mine. This is the condition of natural man. He is a being which is both complete in some senses and has further uses and capacities in further senses. Each of the three items is representative here of substances in a state of potentiality. They may remain as they are, or circumstances, and in the case of man, effort, may transform them. This is the condition of the first domain, or state of man. In the second domain, however, we have a stage in which something further can be done. The wheat, by effort and knowledge, is collected and ground into flour. The water is taken from the stream and stored for a further use. The salt is extracted and refined. This is a domain of a different activity than the first, which was merely growing. In this domain, stored knowledge is brought into play. The third domain can come into being only after the three ingredients, in correct quantity and proportion, have been assembled in a certain place at a certain time. The salt, water, and flour are mixed and kneaded to become dough. When the yeast is brought, a living element is added, and the oven is made ready for the baking of the loaf. This making depends as much upon touch as upon stored knowledge. Everything will behave in accordance with its situation, and its situation is the domain in which it is cast. If the objective is bread, why talk of salt making? This story, originating with the Sarmoon Sufis, echoes the teaching of Ghazali that the ignorant man has no real idea of the learning of the scholastic. Equally, the scholastic has no adequate conception of the knowledge of the enlightened man. It also underlines the Dervish belief that traditionalist religious, metaphysical, or philosophical schools are continuing to grind flour and cannot progress further, lacking the presence of men of insight who appear only rarely. Valuable and worthless. A certain king one day called a counsellor to him and said, "The strength of real thinking depends upon the examination of alternatives. Tell me which alternative is better, to increase the knowledge of my people or to give them more to eat. In either case they will benefit." The Sufi said, "Majesty, there is no point in giving knowledge to those who cannot receive it, any more than there is point in giving food to those who cannot understand your motives. Therefore it is not correct to assume that in either case they will benefit. If they cannot digest the food, or if they think you give it to them as a bribe, or that they can get more, you have failed. If they cannot see that they are being given knowledge, or whether it is knowledge or not, or even why you are giving it to them, they will not benefit. Therefore the question must be taken by degrees. The first degree is the consideration: the most valuable person is worthless, and the most worthless person is valuable." "Demonstrate this truth to me, for I cannot understand it," said the king. The Sufi then called the chief dervish of Afghanistan, and he came to the court. "If you had your way, what would you have someone in Kabul do?" he asked. "It so happens that there is a man near such and such a place who, if he knew it, could, by giving a pound of cherries to a certain necessitous man, gain a fortune for himself and also great advancement for the whole country and progress for the path," said the chief dervish, who knew of the inner correspondence of things. The king was excited, for Sufis do not generally discourse upon such things. "Call him here, and we will have it done," he cried. The others silenced him with a gesture. "No," said the first Sufi. "This cannot work unless it is done voluntarily." In disguise, in order not to influence the man's choice, the three of them went straight to the Kabul bazaar. Divested of his turban and robe, the chief Sufi looked very much like any ordinary man. "I will take the part of the exciting cause," he whispered, as the group stood looking at the fruit. He approached the greengrocer and wished him good day. Then he said, "I know a poor man. Will you give him a pound of cherries as a charity?" The greengrocer bellowed with laughter. "Well, I have heard some tricks, but this is the first time that someone who wanted cherries has stooped to ask me as if it were for charity." "You see what I mean?" the first Sufi asked the king. "The most valuable man we have has just made the most valuable suggestion, and the event has proved that he is worthless to the man to whom he speaks." "But what about the most worthless person being valuable?" asked the king. The two dervishes beckoned him to follow them. As they were about to cross the Kabul River, the two Sufis suddenly seized the king and threw him into the water. He could not swim. As he felt himself about to drown, Kaka Divana, whose name means insane uncle, a well-known pauper and lunatic who roamed the streets, jumped in and brought him safely to the bank. Various other, more solid citizens had seen him in the water, but none moved. When the king was somewhat restored, the two dervishes intoned together, "The most worthless person is valuable." So the king went back to his old, traditional method of giving whatever he could, whether education or help of any kind, to those who it was decided from time to time were the most worthy recipients of such aid. Sufi Abdul Hamid Khan of Kandahar, who died in 1962, was master of the Afghan mint and a dervish ancient who had mastered Western technology. Among the many teaching stories attributed to him is this one. The king involved is said to have been the late Nadir Shah of Afghanistan, whom the Sufi served, and who died in 1933. The succession of events, however, is based on an earlier story, but this king may not have heard it before. The Bird and the Egg. Once upon a time there was a bird which did not have the power of flight. Like a chicken, he walked about on the ground, although he knew that some birds did fly. It so happened that, through a combination of circumstances, the egg of a flying bird was incubated by this flightless one. In due time the chick came forth, still with the potentiality for flight which he had always had, even from the time when he was in the egg. It spoke to its foster parent, saying, "When will I fly?" And the land-bound bird said, "Persist in your attempts to fly, just like the others." For he did not know how to take the fledgling for its lesson in flying, even how to topple it from the nest so that it might learn. And it is curious, in a way, that the young bird did not see this. His recognition of the situation was confused by the fact that he felt gratitude to the bird which had hatched him. "Without this service," he said to himself, "surely I would still be in the egg." And again, sometimes he said to himself, "Anyone who can hatch me, surely he can teach me to fly. It must be just a matter of time, or of my own unaided efforts, or of some great wisdom. Yes, that is it. Suddenly one day I will be carried to the next stage by him who has brought me thus far." This tale appears in various forms in different versions of Surawadi's 12th century Awarif el-Marif and carries many messages. It is said to be capable of interpretation intuitively in accordance with the level of consciousness reached by the student. On the obvious level it has, of course, morals, some of them emphasizing the very bases of modern civilization. These include, To assume that one thing follows from another can be absurd and prevent further progress, and just because someone can perform one function does not prove that he can fulfill another. Three pieces of advice. A man once caught a bird. The bird said to him, "I am of no use to you as a captive, but let me free, and I will tell you three valuable pieces of advice." The bird promised to give the first piece of advice while still in the man's grasp, the second when he reached a branch, the third after he had gained the top of a mountain. The man agreed and asked for the first piece of advice. The bird said, "If you lose something, even if it be valued by you as much as life itself, do not regret it." Now the man let the bird go, and it hopped to a branch. It continued with the second piece of advice. Never believe anything which is contrary to sense, without proof. Then the bird flew to the mountain top. From here it said, "O unfortunate one, within me are two huge jewels, and if you had only killed me, they would have been yours." The man was anguished at the thought of what he had lost, but he said, "At least now tell me the third piece of advice." The bird replied, "What a fool you are, asking for more advice when you have not given thought to the first two pieces. I told you not to worry about what had been lost, and not to believe in something contrary to sense. Now you are doing both. You are believing something ridiculous and grieving because you have lost something. I am not big enough to have inside me huge jewels. You are a fool. Therefore you must stay within the usual restrictions imposed on man." In Dervish circles, this tale is regarded as of very great importance in sensitizing the mind of the student, preparing it for experiences which cannot be elicited in ordinary ways. In addition to being in daily use among Sufis, the story is found in the Rumi classic the Mathnavi. It is featured in the divine book of Atta, one of the teachers of Rumi. Both men lived in the 13th century. The Mountain Path. An intelligent man, a scholar with a trained mind, came one day to a village. He wanted to compare, as an exercise and a study, the different points of view which might be represented there. He went to the caravanserai and asked for the most truthful inhabitant and also the greatest liar of the village. The people who were there agreed unanimously that the man called Kazab was their greatest liar, and that Rastgu was the truthful one. In turn he visited them, asking each a simple question. What is the best way to the next village? Rastgu the truthful said, "The mountain path." Kazab the liar also said, "The mountain path." Not unnaturally, this puzzled the traveller a great deal, so he asked a few others, ordinary citizens. Some said, "The river," others, "Across the fields," and others again said, "The mountain path." He took the mountain path, but in addition to the matter of the goal of his journey, the problem of the truthful and the liars of the village troubled him. When he got to the next village and related his story at the rest house, he ended, "I evidently made the basic logical mistake of asking the wrong people for the names of the truthful and the liar. I arrived here quite easily by the mountain path." A wise man who was present spoke. Logicians, it must be admitted, tend to be blind and have to ask others to help them. But the matter here is otherwise. The facts are thus. The river is the easiest route, so the liar suggested the mountain. But the truthful man was not only truthful. He noticed that you had a donkey, which made the journey easy enough. The liar happened to be unobservant of the fact that you had no boat. Otherwise, he would have suggested the river. People find the capacities and blessings of the Sufis impossible to believe, but such people are those who have no knowledge of real belief. They believe all kinds of things which are not true, because of habit or because they are told them by people of authority. Real belief is something else. Those who are capable of real belief are those who have experienced a thing. When they have experienced, capacities and blessings merely reported are of no use to them. These words, reported of Syed Shah, Qadiri, who died in 1854, sometimes precede the mountain path. The Snake and the Peacock. One day, a youth named Adi, the calculator, because he had studied mathematics, decided to leave Bokhara and seek greater knowledge. His teacher advised him to travel southwards and said, "Seek the meaning of the peacock and the snake," something which gave young Adi a great deal to think about. He travelled through Khorasan and finally to Iraq. In the latter place, he actually came across a place where there was a peacock and a snake, and Adi spoke to them. "We are having a discussion," they said, "about our relative merits." "This is just what I want to study," said Adi, "so pray speak on." "I feel that I am the more important," said the peacock. "I represent aspiration, flight into the heavens, the celestial beauty, and hence knowledge of the higher things. It is my mission to remind man, by mime, of aspects of his self which are hidden to him." "I, on the other hand," said the snake, hissing slightly, "represent the same things. Like man, I am bound to the earth. This makes me remind him of himself. Like him, I am flexible, as I wind my way along the ground. He often forgets this, too. In tradition, I am he who stands guard over treasures, hidden in the earth." "But you are loathsome," shouted the peacock. "You are sly, secretive, dangerous." "You list my human characteristics," said the snake, "while I prefer to list my other functions, as I have already done. Now look at you. You are vain, overplump, and have a harsh cry. Your feet are too big, your feathers too well developed." Adi interrupted at this point. "It is only your disagreement which has enabled me to see that neither of you is altogether right. And yet we can clearly see, if we take away your personal preoccupations, that together you make up a message for mankind." And Adi, while the two opponents listened, was able to explain to them what their functions were. Man crawls on the ground like the snake. He could rise to the heights like a bird, but just as the snake is covetous, he retains this selfishness when he tries to rise, and becomes like the peacock, overproud. In the peacock we see the possibility of man, but not properly achieved. In the sheen on the snake we can see the possibility of beauty. In the peacock we see it taking a flamboyant turn. And then a voice from within spoke to Adi and told him, "That is not all. These two creatures are both endowed with life. That is their determining factor. They fight because each has settled for his own kind of life, thinking it to be the realization of a true status. One, however, guards treasure and cannot use it. The other reflects beauty, a treasure, but cannot transform himself with it. In spite of their not having taken advantage of what was open to them, they yet symbolize it, for those who can see and hear." Considered a mystery by Orientalists, the cult of the snake and peacock in Iraq was founded on the teaching of a Sufi sheikh, Adi, son of Musafir, in the 12th century. This story, preserved in legend, shows how the Dervish masters shaped their schools around various symbols, chosen to illustrate their doctrine. In Arabic, peacock also stands for adornment, while snake has the same letter form as organism and life, Hence the symbolism of the cryptic Peacock angel cult, the Yazidis, is a way of indicating the interior and the external, traditional Sufi formulae. The cult still exists in the Middle East and has adherents, none of them known to be Iraqis, in Britain and the United States.